So basically the Canton system, the way it worked is that Canton itself was not really like fully integrated within China. It's a weird thing that we're not going to get into. But basically the local Cantonese government and traders weren't, no, not weren't. Like the local Cantonese government officials, aka the people directly, you know, responsible to the emperor, weren't supposed to ever fucking talk to a foreigner. And the foreigners weren't supposed to ever fucking get into the actual city to trade. They were supposed to work through middlemen called the Hong, and they were local Cantonese merchants who also operated a lot of trade in like South China Sea, all that kind of stuff. And the Europeans who wanted to trade there also had to operate through a middleman. That was basically the East India Company. The East India Company was the one that overseed, at least for the British traders, all the trade. So it was two monopolies interacting. And this trade was fucking profitable as hell because the tea that they, you know, bought in China and all the other Chinese goods, but mostly tea, could be brought back to Britain and be sold for like a fucking shitload of money. So the East India Company as middlemen got a bunch of like fees from that. And through that essentially financed something like, I think, 25% of its income, which obviously is too complicated to actually be represented in Victoria 2, so whatever. But that's basically the East India Company at that time. Now, how did they pay for the tea? Silver, because that was the only, so there were two currencies in China. There were the copper currencies that were supposed to be like only for, you know, like low-level market exchanges, like the peasant buying shit or whatever. But like taxes and, you know, foreign trade and everything else had to be done through silver. There was a kind of silver standard in the economy, which is where the fucking Spanish come from. Because guess where silver was mostly mined? In the New World, in the Spanish New World. So once the Spanish Empire exploded, and, you know, there were all these wars in Latin America, the silver production and the silver trade from the New World to the Philippines, to Taiwan, to China collapsed, essentially. And so the inflow of silver got reduced a lot. And so what happens is, okay, here we go. So army is cool. What happens is the silver price increases a bunch. And again, taxes were supposed to be paid in silver, so it's a real big problem because the farmers are having to effectively pay more because they have to first exchange their copper currency to silver to actually pay the taxes. So taxes for everyone is actually, like, while the numbers for the taxes aren't increasing, they're actually going up. And what's the only thing that's keeping it up is the fact that the British are, you know, fucking pumping silver into China to buy the tea. And the Americans as well at this point, but, you know, relatively less. So, that, however, becomes a problem for the British because the British are losing too much in the trade balance to China, and they don't want to, you know, lose this much silver or whatever. Oh, the Kowloon incident. So what happens is they start to find goods that the Chinese would like. Now, they traded mostly, like, you know, British factory products like textiles. But the most wanted good that they find is opium. Now, the Opium War, as it is known, is entirely possible because of India, because you can't grow opium in the UK, bro. See, as you can see, there's a few regions in the world where opium can actually be grown. I'm not sure about this stuff, but like Turkey a little bit Central Asia, a little bit Persia, a little bit this region, essentially, but it hasn't been introduced there yet. It was mostly coming from India. Patna opium, which was the vast majority of the opium being shipped into the Qing Empire. So obviously the Qing Empire doesn't really like their people getting addicted, but there's actually like a debate for legalization, blah blah blah, it's complicated, and now we're in the Opium War. It gets known as the Opium War because the sort of spark that makes everything explode has to deal with essentially regulations of the opium trade and relations between the East India Company authorities and the Chinese monopoly authorities, and it's complicated, and we're not going to get into it. It's not the place for us to do it. Just know that this war explodes. The larger cause of the war is not really opium, but like British-Chinese trade, which is what was financing the East India Company, which is what was financing the British industrialization at large. It's not this simple, but yeah. So you can see why this shit is important, because this, like, understanding this stuff goes a long way into understanding, you know, why the British became essentially the world's #1 great power. And, the little fucking bitches. The world's #1 great power, and, you know, why Asia got fucked up for essentially decades. And it has to do with, again, the East India Company, opium, and Chinese weirdness when it comes to trade. So basically, why was the East India Company important for opium for the opium stuff? It's because the plantations over here in Patna were essentially like state plantations in a way. They were company business, and oh, little shit. They were company business. This was a monopoly business. So they shipped it to Calcutta, and at that point, the East India Company was like, okay, we don't really like actually bringing in the opium ourselves. So what they did is, after that, they'd like auction off all the goods, all the opium crates, to independent British traders that normally, again, would not be permitted to trade with the Qing Empire, okay? So, like, normally someone from Britain could not just, like, take a ship, go to China, just like, sell shit there, and then get back. That was just impossible. You'd have to go through the East India Company first. But with opium, you could go to Calcutta, buy opium, and then independently get there and, you know, trade semi-independently. So this trade booms, partially because it's very profitable, and partially because it's relatively unregulated. And at this point in history, if you know a little bit, you probably also know that, oh, okay. You probably also know that there was like this whole free trade kind of fever, in a way. Like, you know, everyone was going in on that whole Adam Smith, yo, laissez-faire, capitalism is cool and shit. And, yeah, so the result is China gets flooded with British traders selling opium. And, you know, long story short, the Opium War, blah, blah, blah. So why did I go on this whole fucking digression? Because I like to talk about it entirely. It's not going to have any fucking impact. Well, it is going to have some impact on our current game, and you're going to see why. Well, first off, because we are... Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, little shit. Oh, okay, never mind. Oh, you little fucking trash. Trash can, what the f... Select the fleet, you idiot. Okay. So right now we're gonna kill the Chinese, and killing the Chinese... The heavyweight of Egypt? How the fuck... Why are we at... Oh, the Oriental Crisis, okay. So right now we're gonna kill the Chinese, which is a favorite pastime of everyone that plays Victoria 2. And, we're gonna have to win the war for the UK, partially. Partially. They've invaded Taiwan, which is incredibly, incredibly woke, I guess you could say. Oh, Jesus Christ, that's 7% attrition. I hate this whole, like, Southeast Asia nonsense. I just hate fucking Southeast Asia. I hate fighting it. Why did I fucking decide to play this? Anyway, the current situation of our country is that, yeah, we're... Oh my god, these little shits. Whatever, let's just let them take this shit over. Who cares? Who cares? Current situation is that we're going to be building up our military up to maximum force limit, and there's a reason for that. Oh, Malacca. Okay. And the reason for that is we're going to have to be fighting a lot of people. Now, you might be saying, but didn't you say that you were going to be fighting a lot of Indians? Because they can turn nationalist and kill you. Yes. which is part of the reason why we're building so many fortifications, is because there are gonna be quite a few rebellions, and what forts do in this game is that they slow down the rate at which enemies occupy our territory. So as you can see right now, the Chinese have this army over here, and it's got this occupation process below, right? And once that bar is full, they're gonna occupy it. So essentially, filling up our whole country with forts is going to make it harder for everyone to kill us, basically, and thus reduce our taxes and blah blah blah, all that shit, all that shitteroni. So we want to do that, and there are going to be other people that we're going to be fighting, but I'm not going to spoil it. I am not going to spoil it. So yeah, basically, we're in border war maximum, as you can see. And the reason for the border war maximum is that these guys are all princely states. What the fuck does that mean? That means basically protectorates of the Brits. And there goes, wait, did they preserve? Oh, okay. So like Honduras? Oh no, Guatemala. I'm really bad at these countries. Like Guatemala keeps all the cores. Like they lost it, but they kept all the cores. I wonder if they're gonna take everything back. That would be a fun campaign. The Central Americans. The Central Americans would be fun to play. Yeah, the princely states are basically like also British puppets. Also British puppets, just like us, but they are not, you know, civilized British people or anything like that. They are uncivilized Indians. Jesus Christ, I'm a disgusting individual, am I? Holy shit. Anyway, so now what we're gonna be doing is, oh shit, this might have been a bad idea. I'm building a troop in Malacca, but the Chinese might like send a unit there or something, because they might just like get military access for all these fucking like all these fucking Malaysian people. Yeah. Anyway, it's really, really good that we have this colony over here, Malacca, and there's a reason for that. You're gonna see that later, and it has to deal with, as you can see, the Johor Protectorate and Create Malaysia. And if we ever have everyone in our sphere of influence, that's if we become a great power. You can add people to your sphere of influence. If we add all these guys to our sphere of influence, we can create a puppet Malaysia, which is going to be a lot more effective than a bunch of different, you know, shitty, like, sultanates. So yeah, that's going to be an end game goal for us, definitely. And, oh yeah, right, you're just reinforcing. And basically what we're going to be for a lot of the game is a sort of weird, not confederation, of like, again, a million different ethnicities. Like, if we take a look at the culture map mode, where is it? Where the fuck is the cultural map mode? Restaurazione. There we go. You can see that, like, okay, so like you can see that in Europe, cultures, you know, relatively coincide with countries, right? Colonialism. So countries and cultures don't really coincide. So you have the sort of real Indian people, quote unquote, which is what the Indian stereotypes in the West come from, which is people that live over here, essentially. And then you have everyone else. So we're going to have to try to make all these guys work together. Now, for now, the only thing that's unifying all of our cultures is probably their hatred of us, because, again, we only accept English culture, which means that everyone else in this country is a second-class citizen. And that means basically 100% of our country. So, yeah, fun stuff. Let's go kill the Chinese. Also, apparently we're a Kalat, which is fucking this thing. So, some Muslim fundamentalists. Get it? I'm racist. XD. I don't know anything. And I love how, like, switching generals around gives you a prestige loss, and what the fuck? Robert Moresby. I wonder if this is a random generated name or a real name, because there is a place in the world called Port Moresby. It's in Papua New Guinea. And there we go, the Treaty of Nanjing. In the wake of our defeat against the British, we have been forced to agree to a series of unreasonable demands. Most notably, we have been forced to cede the island of Hong Kong and to abolish the former monopoly of the Kohong, which is the Hong merchants that I was talking about, and their 13 factories in Canton. So now, technically, any British person can trade in China. Technically, the Chinese, until the Second Opium War, don't actually let anyone do it, because the Chinese were really cool, because what they went for is like, oh yeah, these barbarians, they're like too retarded to understand us anyway, so we're gonna it's not okay, this is not literally how they fought, but I'm dramatizing, okay? These barbarians are like too retarded to understand jack shit, so it doesn't really matter that we, you know, did this treaty with them, because it's like, treaties with barbarians? What the fuck are you talking about? They don't know how to read Chinese? What the fuck? Even though at this point there were people that knew Chinese. But yeah. It's like, how are we expected to, you know, how are we expected to conduct, like, actual real diplomacy with countries that are supposed to be our subjects anyway? So we're just not gonna let him do it or whatever. And yeah, this is like the beginning of the end, essentially, for the East India Company's monopoly of the trade in Canton and in China, and, you know, all the viability of the East India Company as a commercial enterprise, essentially. And at this point also, like in mainland British politics, or in home island British politics, there was kind of a shift towards pro-liberalism, and so pro-free trade, anti-monopoly, anti-mercantilism, and the East India Company represents monopoly, mercantilism, everything that these people really didn't like enjoy all that much. And yeah, essentially, like, remember how there was this committee in the British government that was supposed to oversee the East India Company? Well, again, that's taken over by sort of anti-East India Company, or at least skeptical of the East India Company. France, what are you doing? Skeptical of the East India Company people. Most notably, this was under the government of Palmerston, which is basically the time that we're living in right now. Lord Palmerston, or however you're supposed to pronounce that fucking name. And yeah, we have built our thing. So times are supposed to be rough for the East India Company. Now, thankfully, this is a game. This is Victoria 2, so none of these like complicated. Like, already Victoria 2 is like an insanely complicated game, especially when it comes to like simulating trade and, you know, the economy. It's relatively simplistic though when compared to the real world, which is good, because if it wasn't, we'd be in the shit right now. But thankfully, we can just tax the shit out of the Indians, which is not, I think, how the East India Company was supposed to work, but whatever. Again, I'm not like a scholar of the East India Company. Anyway, how much time? 48 minutes. Okay, so we're gonna go for like 10 more minutes, and then after that, this is probably like the second video in the series, because I usually do, again, 30 minutes of episode. And yeah, actually, since now we are in a position where most of the introductions have been introduced and the first war has been fought, I'm actually going to skip ahead, and until there's something interesting going on, I'm just gonna play along to this glorious music. Oh, and another thing that happens from time to time is that you get spoon-fed by the UK. Or, well, not really spoon-fed, because a lot of the times it's actually you that has done the job in conquering something. But once the UK actually takes over a territory, in, like, this whole area generally, what happens is that they hand it over to you. there's an event that gives in. Like, for example, the UK had just taken over Patan and Raikot, which, if you remember earlier on, they weren't our things. They have taken it over because they had an event, I think, to annex whatever retarded miner was there. And they just give it to you, which is nice. Thank you, Britain. That's more money. More pounds for the shareholders. Oh, here we are. So what just happened is a pop-up came saying, "You're being occupied by the Sikh Empire," and I didn't know I was at war with the Sikh Empire, the Sikh Empire. Oh, see, I was worried about like getting randomly invaded by hordes of immortals, going like, "Spartans, die!" But apparently the Persians have dishonored the alliance. Anyway, now we're at war with the Sikh Empire, and the Sikh Empire is relatively strong. They are uncivilized, but they do have like some technology, if I recall correctly. Like the Sikh Empire is actually playable in India, which is not, you know, not like most of these Indian miners. You can technically select them, but outside of like Hyderabad, maybe because it's massive, none of these fuckers ever have a chance. They just get fucking curb stomped by the Brits. And it's basically railroaded. They have no chance. The Sikh Empire does have somewhat of a chance, but as you can see, we are still much stronger than they are. Oh crap. Oh crap. Oh shit. They actually reinforced. So, they actually ruined one of our armies. Yeah, the Battle of Firozpur. Wait, what? What the fuck? Apparently, both of our guys decided to retreat. Anyway, they ruined one of our armies, but they... Oh, shit. There's actually a few of these that don't have... they don't have reinforcements available. A few of these brigades. As you can see, these red guys... basically, what this red means is that there aren't enough people in the population unit from which you have recruited this military unit to reinforce the military unit. That's basically how the game works. So unless we just wait a long time for essentially the population to replenish, we are going to have issues. Okay, whatever. It's just... And Mexico is having to deal with nasty Mexico business, which is pretty much par for the course. Like, Mexico in this period was not happy about their situation. There we go. And as you can see, we're just, you know, swagging all over the Sikh Empire. And now we're going to go ahead and take their capital, Lahore. And that should be mostly the end of the war. The British will probably piece them out as soon as we take the capital city. There we go. And as you can see, we take Kashmir, which is never going to be a problem for anyone. And we can do another decision. Now, these decisions all have prerequisites. The prerequisite for this one is to, for Afghanistan to either neighbor the UK or the East India Company. The Simla Declaration. The British interest in India are threatened by a potential Russian expansionism into Central Asia, which was the Great Game, which is another whole fucking mess of a topic. Afghanistan must be brought into the fold in order to protect our holdings in India. So basically, the British at this moment in history, this is... Remember, around the period where also the Crimean War breaks out relatively soon. So there were a lot of fears in Britain, partially justified, that Russia was an expansionist piece of shit, you know, hellhole, despotic nightmare, fucking, that is gonna try to take over the world. Now, this is a common theme with Russia, you may have noticed, in the last few decades, or in the last few centuries, really. So, that's understandable, but this time it was even a little bit more insane, because in this period of history, Russia was expanding towards Central Asia. Now, as you can see, the Central Asians haven't been subjugated by Russia yet, but, you know, they were pretty quickly advancing towards the south. Why did they want to do that? Most likely to try to reach the Indian Ocean, most likely for Persia, to connect themselves to the global trade, blah, 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 blah. What the British saw this as is, oh shit, they want to invade India. Because they were really big brain. So we're gonna go and kill Afghanistan in order to not have a war in India. I don't know. The British at that in that period of history, they were like really insanely big brain. And one other thing that is really big brain is that this war is probably like one of the worst British military disasters in history in real life. Like the famous Great Retreat from Kabul or whatever, because like the British send an army up here and it gets fucking demolished. Like they send like something like 30,000 people or something, and one guy gets back. One guy. One fucking guy. Anyway, it's actually supposed to happen, I believe, a little bit earlier. Like this expedition is supposed to happen simultaneously with the Opium War, but whatever. It is fine. And this is going to be an insanely easy war because Afghanistan goes to war with Britain, which means they go to war with everyone. So all the like fucking weird Indian miners are going to send shit. And yeah, that's it. It's got predictable results. Like they don't survive. They are not going to survive. So we're just gonna, you know, kick in the door and the whole rotten structure will fall down. Oh, Jesus Christ. He also attacks someone in the mountains, which is not a good idea. Not a good idea at all in Victoria 2. Because mountains means defense and a lot of it. But apparently we reached there as soon as the other Indian retards got killed. I don't know, whatever. We don't care. So we just did the initial, like, occupation and battle. And as you can see, because we took, like, Kabul instantly, we get their stuff, and they become a satellite of the UK. So yeah, British India expands, which is good for us. XD. What the fuck? Okay, people are just randomly talking to me on Steam. Okay, unfortunately we have soldier problems. Soldier issues. Rep. Anyway, we need to build more forts, and I think there's gonna be a few more wars with like random Indian miners that are gonna occupy our time, but that's not really that interesting, so I won't show it. So see you in a bit if anything important is gonna happen. What the fuck? The East India Company gains a place in the sun, casts belly on Portugal. This is so hilarious. I don't think we can actually even declare war on Portugal because we're a colony. Yeah, because we're a sub-state. Oh, that is so fucking sad. I wanted to declare war on Portugal and let the British take a fucking random Portuguese colony for me. That would have been so fucking great. But unfortunately, it was not to be. So that's a random event, by the way. Okay, so since nothing much of interest is going on, I shall be leaving you guys and ending this first recording session. Funny things that are going on is there is a dictatorship in California that's trying to rebel against Mexico, it looks like, and the Americans are having none of that, and they're invading. So yeah, that's going to be the annexation of California into the USA, most likely, and probably of everything else, too. Anyway, in Europe, France has turned into a republic because of... Wait, this is before 1848. What the fuck? Guess they already had their revolution. Early in time. And Again, the date is 1847, so 1848, if you know a bit of European history, you know it's a bit of an important date, so shit's about to go down in Europe. In Asia, the Qing Empire continues to get fucking wrecked, I guess, by the whirlwinds of history. And there's Heavenly Kingdom cores all over, so there's going to be Heavenly Kingdom, Taiping Rebellion coming in. And yeah, so I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you soon, and the next time, we're going to kill some more uncivilized people.